We found something under the mountain, something that shouldn't be there. The radar showed a metal object over 100 meters long, buried deep in a tunnel that doesn't exist on any map. When the military arrived and sealed off the area, we knew this wasn't just another mining accident. This was the train everyone thought was a myth. My name is Peter. I've been working in these mountains for 23 years. My father worked here, his father before him. We know every tunnel, every shaft, every collapsed passage in the Owl Mountains, or at least we thought we did. In August 2015, two men came to us with a story that sounded insane. They had proof of something the Nazis left behind in 1945, something worth billions, and they needed miners who knew these mountains to help them find it. What we discovered changed everything we thought we knew about the final days of the war. Let me take you back to understand why this matters. Spring of 1945. The war was ending badly for Germany. The Red Army was pushing west, getting closer every day. The Nazis knew they were running out of time, so they started moving everything valuable out of the eastern territories. Gold, artwork, documents, things they had stolen from across Europe during 6 years of war. The Owl Mountains in Lower Silesia became critical. This wasn't random. The Nazis had been building something massive here since 1943. Project Reis, giant. That's what Reis means in German. A network of underground tunnels and bunkers carved deep into the mountains. They used slave labor. Thousands of prisoners died digging these passages. The official story was that it would be a new headquarters for Hitler, safe from Allied bombs, protected by solid rock. But here's what nobody talks about. The tunnels were never finished. When the Soviets got close in early 1945, the Nazis abandoned everything. They sealed passages. They destroyed records. They left in a hurry, and according to local witnesses at the time, they loaded a train with everything valuable they could carry. Then that train disappeared. My grandfather was 14 years old in April 1945. He lived in WWII, the town at the base of these mountains. He told me a story when I was young. He said he saw a long train moving south in the middle of the night. No lights, just the sound of the engine echoing through the valley. By morning, the train was gone. The tracks leading into the mountain showed fresh activity, but there was no train, just a tunnel entrance that had been blown shut. For 70 years, people dismissed these stories, legends, myths, the ramblings of old men who wanted attention. After all, no one found any proof. The Polish government searched some of the tunnels after the war. They found nothing. The area became a mining region. We dug for coal, for copper, for anything valuable in the rock, but we never found a train full of Nazi gold. Then in 2015, everything changed. Two men walked into the mining office in WWII, Peter Koper and Andreas Richter, one Polish, one German. They said they had spent years researching the Nazi gold train. They had old documents, testimonies from German soldiers who served in the area, and most importantly, they had ground-penetrating radar scans that showed something massive buried near the 65th kilometer of the Wrocław-Wałbrzych railway line. I was in the room when they showed us the images. The radar doesn't lie. There was a metal object approximately 100 meters long sitting in what looked like a sealed tunnel about 8 to 9 meters underground. The shape matched a train. The location matched the stories my grandfather told. This wasn't imagination. This was data. The problem was access. The area they identified sat directly under a mountain that had been mined extensively. Over 70 years, we had dug hundreds of passages through this region. Some were still active. Others had collapsed decades ago. The tunnel network was unstable. Going in blind could kill everyone involved. We needed to map everything first. The Polish government got involved immediately. When word leaked to the press, the story exploded. International news crews showed up in Wałbrzych. Treasure hunters from around the world tried to access the site. The military had to cordon off the entire area. They brought in their own ground-penetrating equipment, their own engineers. They wanted to verify the claims before allowing any excavation. I was part of the team assigned to help with the survey work. My job was to guide the military engineers through the existing tunnel systems to get them close to the target location. We spent weeks underground, checking structural integrity, looking for passages that connected to where the radar showed the object. Every day felt like we were getting closer to something impossible. Here's what most people don't understand about these mountains. The Nazi tunnel network was insane. We're not talking about simple mine shafts. These were massive passages carved through solid rock. Some tunnels were wide enough to drive trucks through. They had ventilation systems, electrical wiring, rail tracks, and many of them connected to each other in ways that made no logical sense. The Nazis built this network in just 2 years using forced labor. Nobody kept complete records. When they left, they took whatever maps existed. As we moved deeper, we started finding things. Small things at first. German helmets, old ammunition boxes, rusted tools with Wehrmacht markings. Then we found something that made us stop. A bricked-up passage that didn't appear on any modern map. The bricks were old. Wartime construction. Behind it, we could hear hollow space. This was what we were looking for. The military took over at this point. They brought in specialized equipment to safely break through the wall. No explosives. They couldn't risk causing a collapse. It took 3 days to create an opening large enough to see inside. When they finally broke through, they sent cameras in first. What those cameras showed caused immediate confusion. There was a tunnel, a railway tunnel, but it had been deliberately collapsed from the inside. Tons of rock and debris filled the passage. If there was a train in there, it was buried under meters of rubble. The question became immediate and urgent. Did the Nazis collapse the tunnel with the train still inside? Or did they collapse it to hide evidence that the train had already left through another route? The excavation began in November 2015. Heavy equipment was brought in. Engineers calculated that they would need to remove approximately 4,000 cubic meters of rock to reach the area where the radar indicated the metal object. Every cubic meter had to be examined as it came out. We were looking for anything, train parts, gold, documents, anything that proved the legend was real. I worked the day shift, 12 hours underground. The tunnel was cramped, hot. The air was thick with rock dust even with the ventilation systems running. We moved slowly. Every bucket of debris was checked by hand before being hauled to the surface. The process was exhausting, but none of us wanted to miss anything important. 3 weeks into the excavation, we found the first piece of metal, a section of railway track. It was old. The metallurgy matched German wartime manufacturing. This was proof that a train had been here. But was it the train? We kept digging. Then one morning in early December, we broke through into a larger cavity. The rockfall had created a hollow space behind it. We could see further down the tunnel now, and there, partially visible under remaining debris, was the outline of something massive and metal. The site supervisor called a halt to manual excavation. They brought in more sophisticated scanning equipment. Over the next 48 hours, they mapped the entire cavity. The results were definitive. There was a large metal structure buried in the tunnel. Based on the dimensions, it could be a train. But there was a problem. The metal signature was wrong. Gold is dense, very dense. If a train was loaded with tons of gold bars, the radar should show specific density readings. The object we found wasn't dense enough. It was hollow. This wasn't a treasure train loaded with gold. This was something else. The government made the decision to fully excavate the object. It took another month. When we finally cleared enough debris to see what we had found, the truth hit us like cold water. It was a train, a German military transport train. But the cargo cars were empty, completely empty. Not a single gold bar, not a single piece of stolen artwork. Nothing but empty cars that had been deliberately sealed inside a collapsed tunnel. So what happened? Where did the gold go? After months of analysis, historians started piecing together what they think really occurred in April 1945. The Nazis did load a train with valuables. Witness accounts from 1945 were accurate about that, but the train that disappeared into the mountain wasn't the treasure train. It was a decoy. The Germans knew the Soviets would search for their stolen wealth, so they created a false trail. They sent an empty military train into the Owl Mountains and deliberately collapsed the tunnel behind it. Anyone searching would find evidence of a sealed tunnel and assume the treasure was still inside. The real treasure train likely went south through Czechoslovakia into Austria. Documents recovered after the war show that Nazi officials evacuated billions in stolen assets to Alpine regions where they thought they could hide or negotiate with them after surrender. Most of it was recovered by Allied forces in 1945 and 1946. Some was never found and probably never will be. But here's the thing that still bothers me. Why go through so much effort to hide an empty train? Why collapse an entire tunnel system? Why leave just enough clues to keep the legend alive? Unless there was something else in these mountains that they wanted to protect, something more important than gold. We're still exploring the tunnel network. There are passages we haven't accessed yet, sections that were sealed with the same wartime construction methods. Every few months, someone finds something new, a chamber we didn't know existed, documents sealed in waterproof containers, evidence that the Nazis were doing more in these mountains than just building bunkers. My grandfather died in 2003. He never knew if his story about the train was real or just a childhood memory distorted by time. But he was right about one thing. Something did disappear into this mountain in 1945. We found it. It just wasn't what anyone expected. The mystery isn't solved. It's just different now. We're not looking for gold anymore. We're looking for answers about what the Nazis were really doing here in the final days of the war. And every tunnel we open brings us closer to understanding. If you want to see what we found inside the sealed chamber, watch the next video.